You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 11th of February 2026 on Monocle Radio. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting live from Studio One here at Midori House in London. I'm Chris Chermak. Coming up on today's programme.
This is a devastating and unimaginable tragedy. We can't imagine what the community is going through, but I know it's causing us all to hug our kids a little bit tighter tonight.
The Premier of British Columbia, David Eby, there reacting to devastating news of a school shooting in his state that has left 10 people dead and Canada in mourning. We'll have the latest. We'll also turn our attention to the Munich Security Conference, due to start tomorrow. We'll have a look at the Winter Olympic trials and travails of two nations watching it most closely, Austria and Switzerland. And finally,
the new trends, new materials, new product, but it's not just that. It's this sense of community that we are really building together.
Our Monocle team in Milan has been looking ahead to Salone del Mobile 2026. All that right here on The Briefing with me, Chris Chermak. Welcome to the show, everyone. We will start with some devastating news, as you heard at the top, out of Canada, which has suffered one of the worst mass shootings in its history at a school in the town of Tumbler Ridge in British Columbia. At least 9 people have been killed, 25 injured. The alleged shooter, also found dead at the scene. Joining me now is Paul Vieira, reporter in the Ottawa bureau at the Wall Street Journal, and Thomas Lewis, Monocle's Toronto correspondent. Good to have you both with us on this. Thomas, let's start with you. Just give us a rundown if you could. What do we know?
Well, what we know so far, Chris, is that at lunchtime, local time, in the very small town of Tumbler Ridge, which has a population of around 2,400, if I understand it correctly, about 750 kilometres away inland, away from Vancouver in British Columbia. Someone wielding a gun entered a high school in the town of Tumbler Ridge, and that apparently after shooting 2 people at a house in the town as well. The police arrived within about 2 minutes, which the Premier that we heard from earlier and many other political officials have said that really certainly saved a lot of lives, given how quickly they were on the scene and able to evacuate the students there. There are still some details that we're waiting on. For example, the identity of the person who's believed to carry this shooting out. There were reports by police earlier that in an alert that was sent to mobile phones right across the town, that the person carrying out this attack was wearing a dress with brown hair and appeared to be female. Now, the police have said that they do know themselves the identity of the shooter, but as far as I've seen the latest, they haven't made the identity of the shooter public yet. So there are huge questions still around exactly what took place in Tumbler Ridge, but these kind of events are incredibly rare in Canada, so the shock really is palpable already right across the country, Chris.
Well, absolutely. And Paul, to bring you in on that, what is the view from Ottawa at the moment? We have heard from the British Columbia Premier, as you heard at the top, David Eby. Mark Carney in Ottawa has also reacted, at least on social media at this point.
Yes, he's expressed his condolences and talked about how this is a devastating event for the country. So much so that his office informed reporters last night that he's changing his schedule. He was supposed to start today, heading toward Munich for the Munich Security Conference, where he's scheduled to give a speech. But late last night or early this morning, they sent out a note saying that those plans have been postponed. They will be updated. He was also set to, the Prime Minister was also set to unveil a new industrial defense strategy, but that's also we don't know whether that's still going to happen. But yeah, it's the shooting has definitely upended plans for the Prime Minister in Ottawa.
Well, and Paul, to stick with you on this, I mean, obviously it's a bit early to talk about any policy changes, but just sort of describe the mood and what you expect from, say, Mark Carney going forward, because this is extremely rare, as Thomas was saying, for Canada, frankly, very unlike its neighbour to the south. So how much harder will this hit people and politicians in Canada?
Canada has always prided itself that tragic events like this don't happen as frequently as they do in the US, but they have happened. It was just 6 years ago where we had a shooting rampage in Atlantic Canada that left over 20 people dead. There was also another event in another incident in Saskatchewan where 10 people were killed in a stabbing rampage. There's going to be it'll be somber here and some reflection. I think people are still waiting for the details, still want to know more of the details. But it's obviously going to be a somber day here in Ottawa, and I take it probably in the rest of the country.
Well, Thomas, you did describe briefly Tumbler Ridge, the town, a very small and remote town. Just tell us a little more, if you could, of what we know. This is a very remote community where this happened.
It is. It was a planned community built, if I understand it, Chris, kind of from the early 80s when mining operations began there. And as I said earlier, its population at the moment, I think, is around 2,400 people. And I think what that means is, obviously, as we discussed earlier, that the emergency services were able to get to the scene incredibly quickly. But we've heard, as the Canadian media, of course, is focused almost entirely at the moment in these past hours on this story, that most people in the town will be connected to this tragedy in some way or another, which I think will really impact a lot of Canadians wherever they are right across the country in quite a profound way.
And Paul, just in terms of international reactions, we've heard from a number of world leaders about this, offering their condolences to Canadians and to Carney. Emmanuel Macron, Friedrich Merz in Europe, even Zelensky in Ukraine, Modi in India. Nothing yet from Donald Trump, who, of course, yesterday was very much focused on reviving a trade war between Canada and the United States and a bridge between Michigan and Ontario that's kind of at the center in his crosshairs at the moment. I mean, is that a surprise to Canadians at this point?
I'm going to, I think it's too early in the morning. I think that's not, I would say that I don't think that's top of mind at this moment. How the U.S. react. I think a lot of people are still waking up to this and learning more. I'm not sure that's a priority. I don't think that's a priority right now. The news of the day was consumed this week about, or at least yesterday, about the U.S. and the president and his now new demands regarding a new bridge. But that obviously the shooting has overtaken events.
Thomas, just finally, from your perspective, what do you expect to happen in the next few days? What kind of discussions do you expect will happen around this shooting?
Well, I think, what we've seen, the major sort of shooting, I suppose, since I moved to Canada that is still commemorated every year took place in Montreal in 1989 when 14 women were killed and shot dead in the Polytechnique in Montreal. And that is still commemorated, as I say, every year on December the 6th, Chris. And as we heard earlier, the shooting rampage in Nova Scotia in 2020, which we did cover here on Monocle Radio at the time, those are those opening months of lockdown during the coronavirus pandemic, which, given how particular a time that was, I think the shootings and the scale of the landscape across which those killings took place really, shocked people at a, very sort of unusual time. But what we saw at the time was that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, leader at the time, of course, acted very quickly to amend the laws and to tighten them up where they could, relating to some of the weapons that the gunman on that occasion used. Now, as we heard earlier, there are still so many details about this shooting in Tumbler Ridge in British Columbia that we just don't know yet. But I would imagine that, Mark Carney will want to be seen, at the very least, to be taking the lead and to react in a way that can be seen to be, something that's enacted pretty swiftly, I think, because, as we've said several times now during this conversation, Chris, events like this really don't happen in Canada very frequently at all. And, I think the quick reaction to make sure they don't happen again is quite often top of mind for many Canadians right across the country.
Thomas Lewis, Monocle's Toronto correspondent there, and Paul Vieira, reporter at the Ottawa bureau of the Wall Street Journal. Thank you both for joining us today. Now here's Monica Lillis with today's other news headlines.
Thanks, Chris. President Xi Jinping says China's military has grown stronger after a sweeping fight against corruption. 2 of Beijing's top generals are under investigation or have been removed in one of the biggest shake-ups in decades. Xi told troops the army has tackled risks and cleaned up corruption over the past year. The US has stopped all flights in and out of El Paso International Airport in Texas for special security reasons. The Federal Aviation Administration grounded flights with little warning and also closed airspace over a nearby New Mexico community. The airport says it's waiting for more guidance as the shutdown continues. Heineken plans to cut around 6,000 jobs as beer sales slow. The cuts affect nearly 7% of its global workforce of about 87,000 people. The Dutch brewer also lowered its profit outlook and is searching for a new chief executive. Those are the day's headlines. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Monica. Now to Munich, which is preparing for its flagship annual geopolitical gathering, the Munich Security Conference. Among the world leaders attending will, of course, be a team from Monocle, then that includes our foreign editor Alexis Self, who joins me now before hopping on a plane later on today. Lex, before we get to who will be there, we should just touch on what we just heard at the top of the show. Canada's Mark Carney will not be there. He was going to be somebody surely expected to. He's kind of been the man of the moment, hasn't he, since Davos, but inevitably with what's happened in Canada, he won't be attending.
Yeah, given the importance now of the Munich Security Conference in a rearming world, and some people have called it the Davos of a rearming world. It's the number of leaders who attend has gone up in recent years, and Carney was expected to attend, but obviously, understandably, he's staying in Canada now, given the horrific shooting.
Well, he is, exactly. But let's focus on some of the people who are going to be there. First of all, we should mention there's going to be a strike tomorrow of Lufthansa, the main German airline. That's going to cause some problems for some of those in attendance. I do understand you're flying tonight, so you're okay.
Yeah, that's put a bit of a spanner in the works, or perhaps not a spanner in the works, as it is. Thankfully, we here at Monocle have an excellent travel agent. Shout out Jill Cohen of Pall Mall Travel, who called my colleague Josh Vennett, who's Monocle's editor, first thing this morning and told him about this call to strike tomorrow made by the union that makes up most of Lufthansa's cabin crew and pilots. Both Josh and I were booked on Lufthansa flights tomorrow to Munich. But Jill's decisive action meant that we could rebook on one that's going later today.
So some of the leaders presumably will not have that problem because they're probably not flying Lufthansa. But anyway, talk about some of the leaders who are going to be there. And I guess just to frame this, I mean, we all remember last year very well, the Europeans sitting kind of stunned, listening to J.D. Vance, the American vice president, chastising them for their role in the world, their sort of response to freedom in the world. Presumably they're not going to be shocked this time around.
Well, speaking of acting decisively, it's a good segue into a discussion about Europe's response to the second Trump administration. Yes, I was there in Munich last year, and it's hard to emphasize how decisive a speech that was in terms of changing the mood. Now, humans often like to put a lot of store, metaphorical and other, on particular speeches or events or moments as really, encapsulating a time and signalling a change. For example, we had Olaf Scholz a few years ago, the Zeitenwende speech about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Now, in hindsight,
just after the Russian invasion.
In hindsight, perhaps that wasn't as decisive a speech as it felt like at the time, or the chickens have yet to come home to roost, etc. But in terms of signalling what the next 12 months would hold for the transatlantic alliance, that speech last year was a complete page turner, or changing of the guard. People were shocked in the Bayerischer Hof, and especially European politicians. To answer your question, I think that the whole build-up to this year's conference has been about, on Monday, the Munich Security Conference released its annual report, the title of which is Under Destruction, and it references the post-war liberal global order constructed by the US and how that's being destroyed. So to answer your question, I don't think, at least when it comes to transatlantic alliance, that there's much that would shock European leaders this time around.
Well, then just finally, Lex, even if they're not going to be shocked, the next question becomes, okay, this is what we have, the destruction, as you're describing it, from the Munich Security Conference's annual report. What happens next? What are European leaders going to be saying? What do you expect them to say? Are they going to show unity? Are they going to show an alternative to that destruction that they're seeing from the United States?
Well, to go back to talking about Mark Carney, I think that the power of that speech and the reason that it was so welcomed and lauded around the world, but particularly in Europe, was because it presented a very highly articulate vision of what this post-liberal order would look like and what it meant for middle powers, which, I guess the EU is one, and particularly Western European countries like the UK, France, Germany are, and Canada, and what they might do in that situation. Now, I think that Europe has gotten its act together when it comes to showing that it is invested in its own defence by investing in its own defence. Now it needs to articulate what the future looks like for Europe and how it intends to both assert itself and try to shape the world over the next few years and at least over the next 3 years of the second Trump administration.
Alexis Self, Monocle's foreign editor, thank you for joining us just ahead of your trip to Munich. We'll have plenty from the Munich Security Conference over the next few days. Alexis Self, Anita Riota, Andrew Muller, a whole team will be there for us over the next few days. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. You're back with The Briefing. I'm Chris Chermak. Now, the Winter Olympics are watched by many countries and people around the world, but inevitably they matter for some countries and people more than others. And for the alpine nations of Switzerland and Austria, well, it probably matters more than for any other set of countries. Inevitably, there is a rivalry between the two because it's a chance for both to shine, and inevitably each wants to outshine the other as well. And, in that context, joining me now for another round of Austria versus Switzerland from Zurich to defend Switzerland's honor is Desiree Bandley, Monocle Radio producer. Grüezi to Zurich. That's the last happy greeting you're going to get from me, Desi.
Servus, Chris. Timing could not have been better for me.
I know. This is the sad part that we have to start with. We have some breaking news. It breaks my heart, Desi, for you to deliver it. What happened this morning?
We do actually. So in case you've missed it, the Super Gs or the Super Giant Slaloms just finished and the Swiss won. So Franja von Almen managed to grab his third gold Olympic medal in those games. So he's the first Swiss person actually in Winter Olympic Games who manages to get 3 golds. And we also got bronze, which is kind of a side. That's how good we are. It's a side notice. And then I can check. So you are number 5 and number 7. So yeah.
I mean, this is just one race, but yes, this was incredible. And this one guy, Almen, has been a thorn in our side with his 3 medals. You are leading these Olympics overall. I'm just gonna, even as an Austrian, I do have to be honest about the facts. But I think we have the most iconic moment yet with the 40-year-old Benjamin Kahl winning the parallel giant slalom in snowboard. Oldest individual gold medalist winner ever. So I'm going to throw that out there. He also did an iconic celebration. Took off, his entire top and sat in the snow, lay down in the snow, let out a lion roar. What was your highlight so far, Desi?
I think just in general, I have to say we're doing quite well in all these alpine sports. So all the, like I said, just today and also the last few days, I think just all the skiing, we just did a great. So if I'm from a Swiss perspective, obviously, which I'm looking at the games, then I think that's for us certainly a highlight. We also had ski jumper, which surprisingly we got a medal, which we were not thinking we would get. So ski jumping also a highlight for us.
And another one where the Austrians failed, which is very sad. But I'm going to go with the good ones, and that is the snowboard and the combined skiing medal for the women as well. So we've got 2. We're going to keep going. You have been crunching the numbers. Desi, I understand the historical numbers between these 2 arch rivals. From my perspective, all that matters, Austria leads the historic medal count before these Olympics started. 71 golds to Switzerland's 63. How much does that sting?
It does sting, and especially so I did some research. If we just stick with what we think we're clearly the best, which is all these alpine skiing things, we only have, so if we go back since 1948, we only have 73 medals and you have 126. So there the difference is even worse for us.
I appreciate you giving me that. I like that we're giving each other the admissions of how well or badly we're doing.
We're doing.
Can we at least both agree that we hate the Germans and when they win?
Yeah, I mean, you said it first, so it's fine. I can just agree with your point. better Austrians than the Germans, yeah.
Better the Austrians than the Germans. Yeah. Better the Swiss than the Germans. I'll give you that as well. Just talk about the skiing, though, because you were talking about that, the fact that this is what you're watching, this is what Austria as well watches. Just put this in context for us. I'm curious from the Swiss perspective, how big is this? How much does skiing matter to this country?
Oh, it matters a lot. So, for example, when we had the men's downhill, which was also won by Franja von Almen, we had 1 million, that was on Saturday, we had 1 million people watching, which is nearly 80% of the market share. So I think those really are the destinations. Not to say we don't follow the others, where we do also have strong contenders, but I think for us, all the skiing, everything that has something to do with going down a slope, is it with a trick, is it with a snowboard, is it with skis? We are watching and we want to be the best.
And is everyone watching and skiing themselves as well? Is it like the Austrians? Are you all born on skis over there?
I think we are. I mean, I haven't been on skis for, I think, 15 years, but I still proudly say I'm a skier. So I think that's kind of, I think we've all, we all went, as soon as you can walk, basically, you go into the ski schools. That's what you do.
Does this give you a hankering, Desi? Are you going to get back on the skis after watching the Winter Olympics?
You know what? It does a little bit. I mean, not to compare, like, far off from what they do, but it does make you think, oh, I should do this more often, because the views from the Alps, breathtaking.
Absolutely breathtaking. Both Austria and Switzerland have breathtaking views. Obviously, Austria has the better breathtaking views. I'm just going to leave that out there. But finally, Desi, the Olympics are still going on. We've got a week and a half left to go. Is there a particular event that you're most excited about looking forward?
I think for me, everything that has to do with the ice canal, I just find it fascinating how you would want to do something like skeleton, where you just go head first down an icy canal. Every time I watch it, I'm just like, that's just wow. So I think that, and also just stuff like I never watch usually, but curling always a favorite to watch. and also the ski freestyles and the snowboard freestyles I quite enjoy when they do like big air and all the moguls and everything.
Our British producing team is very excited that you mentioned the curling. This is where they hope to get medals, so that's one.
Are they actually?
Well.
We as well. Are you good? Is Austria good in curling?
No, Austria not. The British. The Austrians have nothing to do with curling whatsoever.
Oh, they beat us actually, the British. Yeah, no, not good. Yeah,
exactly. The British are hoping. This is their one hope here. So
yeah, they don't have a lot, I think.
They don't have a lot.
Have they won a gold so far?
We can both agree that we feel sorry for the British. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, we can.
Desiree Bandley in Zurich, thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to more medals for the Austrians and maybe a couple of medals for the Swiss as well. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. Finally, on today's show, the Winter Olympics have been underway since Friday's opening ceremony in Milan. As you've just been hearing, Monocle is there on the ground as well throughout the next 2 weeks, broadcasting from the Allianz Winter Sky Lounge with a special show called Monocle in Milan. And earlier today on that program, our host and Europe editor-at-large, Ed Stalker, spoke with Maria Porro, the president of Salone del Mobile. He started by asking her about the intersection between sport and design.
I think there's a very strong interconnection, and it was always there. I think about the design of the uniforms of the athletes and the importance in the not only in the aesthetic but also in the research and development of new materials, and then also the buildings that host games are architecture that need to study in a certain way. So also that is very important, and the idea that an Olympic game is something that arrives and goes, so it's something that doesn't stay, can be ephemeral. So also the idea, there's a connection with fairs that are something that is built and then disassembled. So how do you build an architecture that doesn't interfere with the city, that is sustainable? So I think that Olympic Games are asking a lot of questions that also design can answer to.
Tell me, let's move on to Salone del Mobile itself. Yeah. We've talked a lot on this show already about Milan growing as a city. How do you think this, what is arguably the premier design fair in the world, covering furniture and lighting and much more, how do you think it's helped raise, I guess, the profile of the city of Milan? Or do you think it's sort of risen as Milan has ascended as well?
The question is always who is born first, the egg, the chicken and egg, yeah. The chicken and the egg problem. But there are different stories behind the reason why Brianza and the north of Italy was such a fertile ground for furniture and then design, because we have to remember that at the beginning they were craftsmanship, and then it turned after the World War and the economic boom into an industrial system that was not nourished by the presence of architectural studio in Milano, and the Salone del Mobile was the catalyzer of all this energy. But I really would like to underline also the role of education and school. The smart thing and the genial thing was the fact that at the same time, like Politecnico was born, so the university, but also a lot of art school and technical school in the territories. So a lot of well-known architects that now sign the most important pieces of design or airports all around the world, they grew up in those territories, studying at high school, ebanisteria, so the research on wood, and then they found in Politecnico the possibility to study architecture, and in Salone great opportunities to work shoulder by shoulder with the industry. And this is what makes unique this territory and Salone, this proximity between the industry and the creative minds, this constant exchange.
Well, the fair is taking place in April, as it does every year, slightly later this year. Just tell me, I know from being around all of you guys that it's a year-round sort of job. You're so busy on the road. We were in Saudi Arabia last year together, and sort of Salone goes on the road to New York and India and all these places. How are the preparations going? And, what little teasers can you give us about what's coming up, what novelties we have for the 2026 edition?
Let's describe Salone as a urban designer. I mean, we started, from the empty pavilions of Raw, where now the ice skating and hockey is competing. And we start from a white page. So we have an incredible opportunity and responsibility in terms of the design of the fair. But once the urban project is settled, then it's each company that is actually creating its own space. So, but at the same time, in the past years, Salone has been working a lot in also creating cultural moments of like conferences. And this year we are working with OMA and Rem Koolhaas to create this international conference about contract and Giga project, which is an incredible opportunity also for the companies participating. So we are looking forward to listen and understand how this field of big project, that is a very wide field, how can we interpret what is request to the industries, what are the challenges for the future in this sense. Then of course, the reason why we travel so much all around the world is because we feel, especially after COVID, that it's very important to be present and in the territories. So Salone is a sort of antenna, an antenna that then gives back the insights to the entire furniture and design industry. And also we try to create this sense of community, which is so important. This community then has the possibility to gather together in Milano. So what we are looking forward to see is how many countries our visitors will come from, how many people will have the possibility to come and visit, which kind of dialogue and new collaboration will come from Salone. Yes, of course, the new trends, new materials, new product, but it's not just that. It's this sense of community that we are really building together.
Maria Porro, the president of Salone del Mobile there, speaking with Monocle's Ed Stalker. For more of our coverage from Milan and the Winter Olympics, tune in to Monocle in Milan every day this week and next, live at 9 a.m. London, 10 a.m. Milan time on Monocle Radio or wherever you get your podcasts. Do check out, we'll have plenty more from the Munich Security Conference, and no doubt we'll be at Salone del Mobile later in the year as well. That's all for this edition of The Briefing. It was produced by Monica Lillis, our researcher was Annalise Maynard, and our studio manager was Elliot Greenfield. The Briefing is back tomorrow at the same time. I'm Chris Chermak. Goodbye, and thanks for listening.